Welcome to the Smarter Money Life podcast powered by Forum Credit Union, your go-to podcast for all things personal finance, where we break down complex financial concepts into simple, actionable steps. Whether you're looking to save more, invest wisely, or plan for your future, we've got you covered. Join us each episode as we bring you expert insights, real-life stories, and practical tips to help you live a smarter money life. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Smarter Money Life podcast. I'm your host, Andy Mattingly. As the year comes to a close, it's the perfect time to take a step back and review your financial situation. Now, this can be different for everyone, so today we're going to build a top 10 or maybe top 15 tips for reviewing your current situation and some tips to make your future look a lot better. And to build this list, I'm asking some of our financial advisors and financial coaches here at Forum what advice they give to their clients, their family, and perhaps friends on how to review your previous financial performance and the top advice they've ever received from someone that they use in their own life. I think you're going to find this very interesting. It's a great way to build your list of things that you want to do, and they're all going to give you different perspectives. So make sure you listen to all of them. They have some great things that they're going to be sharing with us today. And joining me now is Louis Wendell, one of our financial coaches with our SAFIS Life program. And I'm going to ask him these 3 questions about what we have to do to make our financial life better next year. Louis, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, so we're going to jump right in. What is the most important area a person should review and reflect upon that will help them make their financial future even better?
So I always like to start and have people sit down and kind of look at, did they have a full understanding and grasp on their financial situation? Everybody kind of, has this idea that this was my goal, this is what I wanted to do. But I want people to make sure that that is the correct financial situation. That way, when they're setting goals, when they're looking for trips or vacations or anything, they're understanding that this is achievable and that, the past year happened and they can learn from any mistakes or achievements that they had.
That's very good. That's very good. So if you were going to put together your top list, your top 2 or 3 reasons why people don't reach their financial goals, what would be those top 2 or 3 things that people should be on the lookout for? Because it's maybe why they didn't reach their financial goals this year.
The first one I always see is there's not enough planning when they set up their goals. So there's short-term and there's long-term goals. Everybody should be setting those, but there should be step 1, step 2, step 3, however many steps are needed to achieve these goals. But usually a lot of people will just say, I want to save up $1,000 without the planning steps on, how much per paycheck or what percentage of their paycheck. So setting up those steps that way they can achieve those goals. And then the second reason that people don't achieve their financial goals is, of course, the year happens, life happens, and so there will be a hurdle occasionally. And so usually people will hit this roadblock and they won't be willing to get back on because they've set this goal and they now see that they're maybe not going to achieve it. And so even though you may not achieve it, it's still working step by step to hopefully get close to that goal and not having the mindset of I'm not going to hit it and I'm just going to give up.
Yeah, those are, I think, a couple of big things that everyone should look out for. So my last question for you, and this is kind of gets into like a little bit of a personal reflection, but this advice might apply to other people. What's the best financial advice you've ever received from someone that has made a difference for you?
The advice I got was make sure that you live the life that you still want to live. Of course, finances are important. You should, not overspend. You should be saving and everything. But occasionally you will need to, plan a vacation. You may need to, buy the new TV whenever Black Friday hits or something. And so make sure you're still, living the life and not saving every single penny because eventually you're not going to have the time or anything to do. So that's kind of what I like to do is make sure I'm still hitting my goals, but as well as, trying to live the life that I still want to live.
That's very good because yes, your life has to be fun or it's not worth it. So Louis, thank you so much for joining us today. I think this is going to be some great advice for our listeners as we end the year and start looking forward to next year.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andy, for having me.
And one of our financial advisors with Forum Private Client Group, Charles, thank you so much for joining me today. I think our listeners are really going to enjoy what you have to say.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Very good. Well, we're going to jump right in. What is the most important area a person should review and reflect upon that will help them make their financial future even better if they want to look back at, how 2025 went so they can make 2026 better?
Yeah. And that was a tough question because it's going to be different for every individual. But I think that a really good practice is to sit back and reflect and review as to whether you're living within or above your means. There's a number of ways you can track that, whether it's tracking your net worth growth over time, seeing how your debt's either being reduced or growing, or how your savings is accumulating. All those things kind of play together. But, in this modern era of targeted marketing, all the pressure you have out there from friends, social media, it is so easy to fall into spending traps and live well above our means. And that's become normalized in our society. So taking a little bit of time to reflect on to whether or not you are actually living within your means, I think, is a useful practice.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really good. And that kind of leads into this next kind of advice or information I'd like to get from you, which is, what do you see as the top 2 or 3 reasons that people don't reach their financial goals for any given year?
Yeah, that's another good question. And there's a number of reasons people don't hit their goals. And I'll start with the fact that most people don't actually have goals established. I think that is the first and primary reason people aren't hitting their goals, is because they're not really well defined. We've all got these abstract ideas of what we want to accomplish. Yeah, we'd like to do this. Yeah, we'd like to do that. But until you actually write down your goals and you come up with things that are specific, realistic, and measurable, you're never really going to move towards that life that you want. So I think that's number one. And number 2, I would say, goes back to that former question. It's fallen into those spending traps, lifestyle decisions that deter you from your long-term goals and your intermediate goals, because we want either immediate gratification or we make an impulse decision. It's tough on consumers right now to stick to a budget because it's never been easier to overspend than it is today.
You make good points, like having a goal and saying, oh, I want to save a lot of money, but not putting out what that is and then spending more. Really, that's hard to accomplish anything, isn't it?
Yeah, it is for sure. And then I think the last thing I'd say is that not partnering with somebody else to help you stay accountable. I think it's really important to have open and clear communication with your partner or somebody that's close to you that you trust, and have those conversations. And if your situation warrants it, maybe even working with a professional, depending on where you're at in your financial journey.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So the last one is, what's the best financial advice you've ever received from someone that's really made a difference in your life?
Yeah, I love this question. I've got several, but I've got 2 for you that I'm going to share with you. My personal favorite is, and I was taught this at a younger age, is to always pay yourself first. And what that means is, rather than covering your bills, spending money, and saving whatever's left over, which is what most people do, you automate the savings first. You pay yourself. You either put that money into your emergency savings or you put it into your retirement account. You do that first directly from your paycheck. And then you go pay your bills, and then whatever's left over, feel free to spend without any guilt because you've already paid yourself first. I think that is some really sound advice that everyone should consider. And the key is to automate it. Make sure that happens out of sight, out of mind.
That is so true, because it's, if you wait till you've paid all your bills and done your spending, there's never anything left.
That's exactly how it usually works out.
Yeah.
And then the second one I heard a while back, and I think that is really sound advice, is that it's always better to be rich than it is to look rich. And in this day and age, it is really easy to hide financial stress and distress. And it is easy to survive for a long period of time living above your means, whether you're leveraging debt or what have you. And you really never know what anybody else's situation is. So before you get envious about what someone's fancy car is, or that nice watch, or that vacation, whatever it is that is making you feel like you need to go spend to match that lifestyle, you have to realize that they may not be in the position that it appears that they are. And keeping that in mind helps us slow down our spending and set our goals and prioritize our needs and our wants a little bit more thoughtfully.
I think that's two great pieces of advice for people to live by, Charles. I mean, you've set out a lot of things there, and I really like on both of those of paying yourself first and also to be rich. Don't just try to look rich, but actually be rich. That's really good advice. And when you dive into it like you did there, that's not easy to do, but it pays so many dividends in the future.
Yeah. All these things are very simple to say. They're very hard to practice, and they take thoughtful steps, and that's kind of the idea behind it.
Well, very good. Well, Charles, thank you so much. I think you've dropped a lot of great nuggets for our listeners. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, happy to help, Andy.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And joining me now is Benji Banks. He's a certified financial planner with our private client group. He's a financial advisor. So I think you're going to really enjoy some of the answers to the questions that I've been asking everyone on the podcast today. So, Benji, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Andy. It's my pleasure.
Okay, well, we're going to dive right in. And, this question is, what is the most important area you believe a person should review and reflect upon in the past that will help make their future year better? Like what's that one thing that you like to tell people, focus on this?
That's a great question. We get asked many, many times from clients. And my response is usually the same, Andy. It is being able to get control of your expenses. When we sit and build a financial plan or trying to have a client look for their financial future, I try to get them to understand there's a few things you can control within your financial plan. And the primary one is your budget. What is your spend? We can't control what the market's going to do. We can't control what the government's going to do, but we can control what our budget looks like. So one thing I encourage all of my clients or anyone that asks for my advice to do is at least annually sit down, if it's just you or if it's you and your spouse, and understand your budget. Not just look at it and run numbers. Understand your budget and where your spend really goes. That's the one area where I think people can really get a handle around their financial future.
And do you find that some people are very surprised at where their money goes because they just pay it and they know they pay it, but when they look back at it, they're like, I had no idea I was spending that much money in this area?
I would say that's an understatement. Yes, a great amount of people, the majority. I always joke with individuals when they do their budget and they come and they're like, there's just no way we spend that much money. And I say, the average person, I don't know the accuracy of this number, but the average person cannot account for probably $500 they spend on a monthly budget, for monthly expenses. Have it, albeit stopping at the gas station, stopping at Starbucks. You know how it is. Whatever your life leads you in those directions, but that is definitely one of the comments we hear on a regular basis.
I'm sure you do. So when you look at people trying to get to their financial goals, what do you see are the 2 or 3 reasons that people don't get there? Like, what do they not do, or what are they doing that kind of keeps them from attaining those goals?
I think going back to what my answer was from the last question is not, for one, not understanding the budget, and for 2, allowing themselves to deviate from that budget early on in the year, and then just kind of giving up and not trying to refocus and bring themselves back to the budget. And a way to allow yourself to be able to get back to that budget that you stated early in the year is to have an emergency fund. So that would be my second observation that is impeding people from reaching that goal, is just not even having backup as the emergency fund, but not being able to cover any expense that may come up, which then causes them to either take a credit card debt or other debts out, which really, creates more and more financial strife as they continue. So when they look at their budget the following year, it's going to add that much more expenses, but there's not any more income. So
Yeah.
having an emergency fund to pay for those one-off expenses allows your budget to stay intact and doesn't send it awry.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I read something and I've seen it repeated several times that a majority of people, when they get a raise, within 9 months, they're spending all of the extra raise. Like their spending just goes up with their raise and they don't even realize it. So kind of back to what you were saying is that people don't follow their budget and they're spending, they just spend what they have.
That's it. That's why we are big believers in disciplined dollar cost average investing, because it takes that ability for you to get in the way of yourself, right? The
Yes.
discipline of having a 401k and allowing that money out of sight, out of mind type of philosophy takes some of that human behavior away from it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, last question for you, and this is kind of gets to you kind of personal, but what is the best financial advice you've received from someone that really made a big difference for you?
It's a great question, Andy, and I gave some thought to this. And the main mentor I had in this business, actually, when I started for him, probably almost 20 years ago, said it in a way that makes sense to the majority of clients, to the majority of public, rather than just an advisor speak. And it's understanding that time in the market rather than timing the market is how you succeed. So to elaborate a little bit on that, meaning you have to be disciplined and invest and give that money time to compound upon itself and experience different market cycles is truly how you build wealth. Trying to time the market, and we hear lots of different examples of this in the financial world today, but trying to time that and thinking every time you're going to hit the nail on the head, it's kind of fool's gold. So the old concept of time in the market, not timing the market, is how we succeed in any of our financial goals.
Yeah, that's great. And I know you've personally shown me some different models when you do different things. And it's just amazing to see, like, when you get someone to run that for you and say, well, here's what your investments can do when you have this much time and if you keep putting this much in. So, yeah, I think that's excellent advice. It's just amazing when you actually see it.
And it's not always the hot tip or the hot thing. It's boring investing, but boring investing is successful investing.
Yes, that's very good. That's very good. Well, Benji, thank you so much for sharing your insights. You've given us some really valuable tips, and I think our listeners, if they take heed to what you say, they're going to make their 2026 a lot better than 2025.
I certainly hope so, Andy, and thanks for having me.
Well, joining me now is Sean Irwin. She's a certified financial planner in our private client group. And I think all of you are really going to like the answers that she has to the questions that I've been asking everyone for this episode as we put together kind of our top 10 list to make our life better in 2026. So, Sean, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Well, we're going to jump right in with this first question. What do you think is the most important area a person should review and reflect upon that will make their financial future better?
Thanks for asking, Andy. It's really difficult to identify one single area because so much depends on a person's life stage and their goals at that time. For Mike Irwin and me, we set aside time at the end of each year for what we call a mini retreat. During that time, we dream big and paint broad strokes of where we'd like to be in the next year, 5 years, and well into the future. We tie those aspirations to our core values, such as caring for family, generosity, faith, among others. And then we consider how we want to use our resources toward those goals. And Andy, when I say resources, I'm not just talking about finances. I mean our time and talents as well.
Absolutely.
I encourage those who trust me with their financial planning to engage in that same kind of big picture thinking. There are plenty of distractions out there that oversimplify this process. Questions like, what's your number, or chasing the latest hot investment idea. Over the last 20 years, I found that this type of thinking can really limit us and how far we go. Instead, I encourage myself and others to start with values and vision and let those guide how you allocate resources. That's the source of real clarity, confidence, and commitment that can get you through those planning stages.
Yes. I mean, I think not enough people take the time that you're talking about with that kind of clarity to look at their financial life and where they want to go.
Well, not just once looking at it, but continuing to revisit it too.
Yes, absolutely. So when you talk to people, and you talk to a lot of people that are your clients or that aren't your clients, what do you find are the top 2 or 3 reasons that they don't make their financial goals for a year?
And Andy, I really thought about this one. I wrote down a list of reasons or things that can tend to get in the way. But when I really, really think about what's at the core of what I wrote down, I can narrow it down to 2. And maybe even if I dig deeper, it comes down to really one thing. The first reason I'm going to say is luck. And that's a broad word, so I want to talk a little bit more about that. But successful people often attribute their achievements to hard work and smart decisions. And I would agree that certain actions can increase your probability of success. But luck also plays a big role in both success and failure. And that's something we can't ignore. Market timing, unexpected life events, even global circumstances are examples of things that are outside of our control. The second reason I see often is living someone else's goals or values. When I hear statements like, somebody put me into this investment thing, or my colleague told me that this would be a really good idea, what I really hear is that more time needs to be spent defining what those goals and values and priorities are. Starting there, clarifying what matters most to us, helps us choose the right tools, and that charges the conviction to stick with a plan and the necessary steps to reach those goals. Too often we try starting with the tools and try to fit ourselves into them, which is often limiting, and it makes it easy for the commitment level to falter. So while luck is a factor we can't control, defining our own goals and values is something we absolutely can. And I would say that's the foundation for meaningful financial progress. And when we don't start there, that's when I see things start to fall apart a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Of all the different advisors and coaches I've talked to for this episode, a lot of them come down to it and say exactly what you kind of said, just in a different way. Just people don't have the conviction, your last point there of conviction of following it through, because it's hard work. I mean, you didn't say it, but it's hard work to do what you want to do there. And it doesn't always have to be hard, but you have to put in a little work and you have to put in a little bit of time, and the continuity and stick-to-itiveness that you kind of mentioned, I think are so important. I think our listeners, should really think about what you just said there, because it's very meaningful to what all of us can do, regardless of what financial situation that we're in or what we're looking at. So I think that's really good advice there.
Thank you, Andy. And I agree, it is hard work. It continues to be hard work, but once anyone starts to see progress, I feel like even though the work is still hard, you see where it's taking you. So it's just that beginning stage when you're trying to see that progress, and you're putting in the work that's particularly hard.
Okay. Now, this has been my favorite question to ask everyone. What is the best financial advice you personally have received that's made a difference for you?
And Andy, that was, I think, the hardest one to answer, because I've been fortunate enough to receive so much really good advice in my life that to really narrow it down to one thing was really hard for me. When I really think about it, I would probably pinpoint one thing if I had to, and that would be something. It didn't come to me personally, but I read from Warren Buffett just that the best investment you can make is in yourself. And that has really stuck with me because it's timeless and incredibly practical. Investing in yourself, to me, doesn't just mean a formal education either. In fact, in Buffett's most recent letter to his shareholders, he wrote, "I never look at where a candidate has gone to school. Never." There's additional context in that letter, and it's worth reading because it's so well written. But my takeaway from reading that is what matters most is your willingness to learn and grow, not the pedigree of your formal education. And for me, that means taking on more at work, putting myself in positions where I'm uncomfortable, and embracing challenges that stretch me. Growth rarely happens in my comfort zone. I heard a quote once that says growth happens outside your comfort zone is where the magic happens. Yeah. And I really like magic. So whether it's learning a new skill or volunteering for a project that feels intimidating or seeking out mentors, I found those to all be ways I could invest in myself. And what I've noticed is over time, those investments tend to compound in ways that no stock or bond ever could.
Yeah, that is great advice, and it is timeless, and it is so many different avenues of that. And there was just something that came out from Warren Buffett, kind of his holiday letter. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, but he even brings that beyond of saying investing in things that you like to do as well. Like you talked a little bit about that before about your whole self. And I think that's kind of timeless in all of that. So I think that is great advice for our listeners to think about.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate you asking me those questions. It really forced me to think about some and reflect on some things.
Well, good. Well, I'm hoping that the listeners listening to, what you've had to say and apply it to what they have. I really appreciate your time, Sean. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I can't think of anything.
Okay.
I just want to say hi to everyone and thank you, Andy, for what you do to help increase the awareness and financial knowledge and acumen that's out there.
Well, thank you, Sean. I really appreciate it. And joining me now is Tammy Mars, our senior financial advisor with Forum Private Client Group. She's been with us a long time, has a lot of clients, so I'm really looking forward to what she has to say about these 3 questions that we've been asking all of our experts here at Forum. So Tammy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andy. I appreciate it.
We're going to jump right in. What do you think is kind of one of the most important areas a person should review and kind of reflect upon that will help make their financial future better?
I would say the most important area a person should review and reflect on each year is going to be their spending versus their savings. So having a budget and sticking to it regardless of temptations. And then also, as you're reflecting on that budget and how those expenses change from year to year, also reviewing your savings goals and making sure that you're increasing your savings amounts each year. That's going to promote long-term financial success.
Yeah, that's really important because a lot of people, as they make more money, they spend more money, but they don't save more money. And I like your comment there about making sure you're increasing your savings each year. So I think that's very important.
Right, absolutely.
So what do you think, or what do you find with your clients or people that you advise that are the top 2 or 3 reasons that they don't make their financial goals in a year?
I would say the number one reason that people don't reach their financial goals for a year is not having an emergency fund. If you don't have those funds set aside for an emergency, then one unexpected large expense can derail all your goals. Other reasons, I think overspending. We've all had those friends that maybe they're in a different position to spend more than what we are, and we're tempted to try and spend as they do, and that can also really move the needle far away from meeting our goals for the year.
So with social media, it's so easy to think that everyone's living the best life that you don't have and force you to feel like you need to spend more, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then one other thing, the third thing that I think is very important and a reason that people may not reach their goals is not reviewing annual expenses like insurance coverages and maybe subscriptions. As our needs change through the year, that coverage, those premiums may change too, whether we're overinsured or underinsured. So I think that's a definite place to review.
Yeah, it's surprising that people don't do that more often. I'm sure you've seen it, and I know of when I've talked to people, like they can save hundreds of dollars a year just looking at their insurance coverages.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the last question I have for you, what is the best financial advice you've ever received from someone else that's made a difference for you?
I think probably the best advice I've ever gotten is to pay myself first, putting those funds away for retirement before I ever see the dollars, but then going a step further. And something that's worked for me is I have several savings accounts set up at Forum to where each month when I get paid, I put a 12th of, our property taxes, maybe our insurance, vacation, those expenses, so that it's not a huge expense all at once that I might be inclined to pay monthly and pay a little bit extra. And I've even gone so far as having a savings account to where when we don't have auto loans, we make a auto payment, a car payment to that savings account, so that the next time we need a vehicle, we have that down payment for the next one.
And you already have the payment in your budget. That's so smart, because
Right.
then you're not spending all, everything that you have left over. And then you're like, oh, where am I going to get this car payment from now? That's really good. And I like your idea of having those separate savings accounts for all those little buckets so that you know what you're saving for. That's really good.
Right.
I hope
and
our
then you can
listeners
personalize
take that
it.
advice.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I hope our listeners take that advice. So that's really good. And joining me now is Andrew Snow, one of our financial coaches / advisors with Safis Life. So Andrew, going to ask you some of the same questions I've been asking all of our other experts that's been joining me today. So we're going to jump right in.
Perfect. Sounds good.
What is the most important area a person should review and reflect upon that'll help them make their financial future even better?
When I was looking at this question, the number one thing that I saw was you need to review your habits. Those are really who you are as a person, not only just with how you're spending your money, but your financial future is shaped by some of the small habitual things that you do. Almost the things that you just do automatically. Like, are you saving on a constant basis? Are you impulse buying when you go to the register at the gas station? All of those are going to move the needle more than even some of these bigger moves that you may end up making. It's those habits and those that you build over time that really make you who you are financially.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. So when we look at why people don't make their financial goals in the year, as you're working with people, what are probably the top 2 or 3 reasons that you see most often is the reason why people don't meet their goals?
The first one that I see is that their goals aren't tied to their emotions and their habits, right? What I like to tell people is that automation beats motivation any day of the week. As you look, motivation goes up and down depending on where you're at. If you're financially stressed, that motivation to put a couple of bucks away to save is almost non-existent. And so if you're not tying that to some of those habits that you build and automation in there, it's going to struggle there. And so that comes into my second, is that people are relying too much on their own willpower to push themselves through. With technology today, it's great. You can log into your app and you can automatically set up, hey, when a deposit comes in, I want $20 to go into the savings account. I want $100 to be moved over to this account. You can set your paycheck. So 50% of it goes to your savings account and 50% of it goes to your checking account. Those little automatic things that you can set up that happen no matter what are going to help you move the way through, especially when you don't want to because things are tough or there's something that you really want to buy. Take It's Just One on sale for the concert that you really wanted to go to, but you didn't plan for it ahead of time. Those little motivations are hard to overcome.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
The last thing that I kind of have written down is people don't build any friction into themselves. Spending can be really easy. Saving can be hard. That's what I see that people come into. It's like, it's really easy to go buy whatever it is that you want to go buy. And sometimes just not having that, okay, I don't need Starbucks 5 days a week. I can cut back to 3 days a week. And I mean, really, when you cut back Starbucks twice a week, that's $20 right there. Unfortunately, how expensive things have gotten, but it's those simple little things that you can do that make some of those bigger impacts.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. So, going to come to my last question. It's one of the 3. It's my favorite question to ask everyone that I've had on. And I think our listeners will find this very useful. But what is the best financial advice you've received personally from someone else that's made the biggest difference for you?
For me, the one thing that sticks to me, and this comes from my grandfather, who was a banker, and my grandmother, who was a teacher. Both of them came in. You have to pay yourself first. That's the most important thing to do. And when I say pay yourself, that means put that money into that savings account. So make sure that is your first priority, that you're saving money, so that the days that they do come, whether you need a new HVAC for your house or new tires for your car, that you have that protection. So you've paid yourself so that you're covered for those days. Yeah,
that's very good. That paying yourself first, I think, is one of the most difficult things for people to grasp, but it's actually the easiest thing that you can do. And you talked about it too, with automating it. You don't even have to think about it. You just start that and You just keep it going. So, well, Andrew, I really appreciate your time today. I think you've given our listeners a lot of things to think about as they prepare for next year to make their financial life better. So thank you again.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed this chat with all of our advisors and coaches here at Forum. I think they've given you some really great tips, and they've put together that top 10 or 15 list that I talked about at the beginning. And I hope you've really enjoyed their candid responses. They are our experts here in helping people look at their financial life and how to make it better. So here's to a successful year ahead, and we'll be back in 2026 with more podcast episodes to help you live your best financial life. That's all for this episode of the Smarter Money Life podcast. Thank you for joining me. I hope you found our discussion helpful and inspiring. You can find more resources on the Smarter Money Life page at forumcu.com. Remember, making smart financial decisions is a journey, and every step you take brings you closer to your financial dream. Be sure to tune in next time for more tips and insights on managing your money. Until then, stay smart and financially savvy.